also felt like, after we said, the Smashing Pumpkins song is cool, I said, yeah, and also it will create controversy a little bit in the fan base, because they're going to be like, what, is that going to be in the movie? That's not 85? Blah, 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 blah. It's so crazy.
Welcome to episode 14 of the Hipsters United podcast. My name is Chris, and joining me this week are Jason.
Hello.
Andrew.
Hello.
And you may remember her from such episodes as the Adore special. Jill has returned.
Hello!
Yay!
This week, a Pumpkins B-side climbed the iTunes sales charts, and some more dates were announced for the upcoming tour. But first, let's catch up with our wayward panelist. Jill, what's new? Have you caught up with our episodes from the past few weeks? And if so, do you have any scathing commentary or rebuttals?
Well, I would like to chide you guys for your extended commentary about all of the pricing last week. I still think it's totally bunk. Give me a break. But you know what? Perhaps I'm being totally bourgeois about that. No, I've been really enjoying keeping up with the podcasts while I've been gone. I'm finally back in New York after a 2-month break being out in Vegas, and then a quick trip swinging through Chicago to meet up with the Smashing Pumpkins Media Militia frontman and a couple of old Gish roadies. So there's going to be a lot more about that I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to write that into some of both Hipsters United content and SmashingPumpkins.com content. But I've been busy, and I'm really excited that there are shows coming up, and I think that it's exciting to see the blog abuzz with news and with crazy comments from all of our viewers. So that makes me really happy, because I think we're finally running some of the other sites into the ground, because we rule.
Jill, I'd be happy to let you off the hook entirely, but I have to ask, what exactly was bunk about the
about the price argument about the tickets last week? I was listening to the podcast from last week again today, because I'd listened to it earlier, or part of it earlier this week, and then I listened to it again before tonight.
Hear that, everybody? You should all listen more than once a week.
Multiple listens are key.
Right.
Yeah. You gotta. It's very subtle, the podcast.
Lots of levels.
There were just, you guys spent so long last week talking about, or rather earlier this week, I guess, whenever you recorded it, talking about that $83 price really being this, I think, I can't remember what the word is that Chris used, but it was it was a controversy. And you know what? I've already made my views clear on this. I don't think it's a controversy. I think it's, rising costs of life in general. And, I think Andrew made the point that it was probably going to cost just as much to, get the gas to go to Davenport, Iowa, because there's nobody that lives there anyway, as it would to just choke up the money for going to see Hammond. And you know what? I was having this conversation with someone else as well. It's the equivalent of them playing in Brooklyn. If they were to come to New York City, oh man, they'd be so, they'd scorn New York City so much by playing in Brooklyn. Oh, come on, it's 10-15 minutes away, it's just outside the city. So, I think everybody knows my thoughts on this, as I've, both posted on Hipsters United and on SP.com, but I think that any obstacle to selling it out or delaying the sellout of it is attributed to the fact that it's a 21-plus show. I think they always had that problem in Chicago when they were selling out, or they were trying to sell out any 21-plus show. It's harder to appeal to that fan base because they have more stuff going on in their lives.
If I quickly, the argument that Jeremy made to me after the podcast last week, in which anyone who's curious can go to last week's podcast and read in the comments on the blog, which is at hipstersunited.com. You can read my conversation with Jeremy, but just to paraphrase the one point that I think he makes that is pretty valid is that obviously money is a factor in anything the band does. They're not in it to lose money, they're in it to make money, they're in it to pay their bills, in part, and obviously they have many other things they desire to achieve with the band, but money is a factor. And Jeremy's a good argument that I think he makes is that Billy wouldn't play a casino in downtown Chicago and charge $83 for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he's saying is to choose to play the casino in Hammond and charge $83 is that obviously the money consideration weighed a little more heavily maybe than usual in that choice of venue and show. Now, I would come back and say, well, it doesn't really hurt anybody, but, to some extent he has maybe some valid point there. Anyway.
Well, but also, I think my one concern is, once you start talking about this stuff and granted, I'm guilty of doing the same thing right now. Once you start talking about this stuff as an issue or controversy, you're setting a precedent for future discussions that we're trying to even avoid or trying to poke fun at in other blogs that we criticize. Once you're setting this precedent of, oh my gosh, we're always going to be discussing the price, look at what they've already come out and said about these upcoming Gish shows. They're going to be charging more money, and if $83 is like, oh my gosh, this is a shocker, a sticker shock. What's going to happen when the come shows are going to be $150 because it's going to be to an audience of 500?
I'll be there.
See,
I don't think the argument
is so arbitrary.
I don't think the argument is about the ticket price. I mean, not by itself. I mean, Jeremy's argument, or whatever he was trying to cobble together into an argument, it had to do with it being a casino. It had to do with it being a Chicago area show, and maybe a little to do with the price. So
right.
It was a multifaceted complaint, and a little hard to put across. And if Jeremy was here, he could do it for himself. But he's a smart guy. He's a blogger with us, so I thought it was worth talking about. But anyway, we're gonna spend another entire podcast on it if we don't move on to something else.
That's true.
But like I said, it was really fun to kind of keep up with you guys while I was gone, because you keep putting out great podcasts for hipstersunited.com.
Well, thank you. Before we get started with the news, I did want to see about your other new gig you have at smashingpumpkins.com. How's that going for you? I guess you've written, three or four articles now?
Yep.
It's been a few weeks.
It's going really well. I think that as we had all speculated quite a while ago, and I don't think I've been involved in any of the podcasts where you've discussed the writers and the actual project itself. I think that it's going to take a while for everyone to hit their stride and to kind of understand what appropriate post length is and what appropriate content it is and how to kind of serialize posts, just like when we first started the blog. I mean, we fortunately did not have a large readership at that time to really set expectations, that we had to set expectations of our readers. So, we had our friends, all three of them that might have checked in on us once in a while. Yeah. So content, while it was decent, took a long time to kind of get it up and running. And same thing with the Pumpkins writer project. I think everybody is bringing an interesting element to the content there. And I'm having a really fun time writing the articles that I am. I know that I've been criticized for being a little bit light on the happy-go-lucky side of things, perhaps, being a super fan, if you will. But you know what? I also think that right now I'm really excited for them to go back on tour. Even though it sounds cheesy, I'm excited to hear the new single "Glow," and I think that they're going to be doing some pretty interesting things up and coming. Plus, I think there's also been a lot of interesting guidance, both from Billy, who has been pretty hands-on with the project, as well as the Smashing Pumpkins Media Militia head. So at their encouragement, I actually did go on this dinner interview with these two Gish roadies this past week, and it was a lot of fun. And they're wanting to dig up old content and kind of flesh out the story of the band and pull some interesting things together to deliver to the fan base. So I'm so far I'm really happy with it.
Well, I look forward to reading that in the upcoming weeks.
There will be a story about Bob English in the near future.
Outstanding.
Losing keys to the van. Even plenty of things. Plenty of things to come.
Jill, you really need to be more unbiased.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, you're so pro Smashing Pumpkins. I just don't get. It's like, oh yes, they're always like something you like. Like, what's with that? I don't know.
I mean, it's like I write a fan blog for them. Right?
I know.
Jeez.
Just so whack. Anyway.
Fair and balanced, just like Fox.
That's right. There should be a downside to everything about the Smashing Pumpkins that we should put right next to the good side of everything about them.
Let's just reformat the blog.
Here's why I really, really like this new song, and here's why I really, really dislike it at the same time.
While they get to work on that, let's start up with the news this week. So first up, please indulge us in a bit of Access Hollywood. So a blog post appeared on Courtney Love's MySpace page last week, accusing Billy Corgan of making her soon-to-be 16-year-old daughter Frances Bean cry by not committing to appear at her Sweet 16 birthday party. She went on to take a jab at Billy's fall from rock stardom, at least that's how I read it, and compared him unfavorably to Gerard Way of My Chemical Romance. And the post was quickly removed, and later in the week she posted a not really retraction apologizing to Billy and claiming that her AOL account was hacked. So first of all, I didn't know anyone used AOL anymore, but secondly, WTF? Does anyone have any idea what's going on here?
Oh, the AOL account. On one of the when we had the post to where on the blog where she said her AOL account was hacked, I put up a comment saying "Return of Moon Kids," and the reference, if no one is old enough to remember, the back in the days when AOL was everyone's internet service provider, apparently someone hacked Courtney's account, or a friend of Courtney's account, and can't remember which one it was, and basically got a whole bunch of private emails from Billy and Courtney and other people, and posted them on the internet and under the name Moon Kids. I don't know if that was she really still uses AOL, or if that was the old. I used that once before to get away with something, and use it again. But so that was that. That's a little strange. It probably was a. I know the old "my ex got hacked" has been used as an excuse by a lot of people who have gotten embarrassed by things they've posted on the internet. So may not exactly be true. We'll give her the benefit of the doubt.
I'm pretty sure my favorite part of her rebuttal was like the explanation of, "Oh my gosh, that's totally not the way I write."
And yet it was exactly the way she wrote the second message. While I love much of what Courtney Love does in the studio, that woman is a hot mess. She is so funny. And like, to actually have the balls to come out and say, "Oh my gosh, I got hacked. Oh, and by the way, it totally wouldn't have sounded like me if I'd written that post if I had." Are you for serious?
I think she was saying that she wrote it as a private email, and that somebody hacked the account, copied the private email, and posted it to her MySpace.
And apparently it happens all the time.
Of what she said.
All the time.
Because she said in the message, like, "Oh, once again, like, these people have access to my account," as if this is a common occurrence.
God, I'd love to be a woman. The shit you get away with.
No, okay. In the post that she makes to try to, cover her tracks, she says, "Someone broke into my AOL account," and this is all with a sick around it. All right, this is a verbal sick. "Someone broke into my AOL account and sent that letter to Perez, although some of the writing was writing that I had wrote but never posted. However, as the KR Weasels, people know that there is a live site that has a own ringtone that lets people know when I am online, yada yada yada. These people can steal it and then twist my words around. I never write in all caps. You can read on most my blogs on MySpace. Yes, I have typos, but it's because I type very fast. It does not make me a tard."
Which is in all caps.
Yes. So, I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of this is like trying to, translate hieroglyphics, but like, she... I think she's trying to say that, even though I'd written half of it, other people twisted around the other half. I don't know.
Did anyone get the sense from, I forget which exactly of her subsequent posts it was, but that it wasn't necessarily the fact that Billy wasn't going to play Francis's birthday party that set off the tears or the drama or whatever, but maybe there was some sort of conversation between the two of them? I mean, it sounded like, I don't know, it's so hard to interpret, but there was something about I wasn't in the room at the time, and that I read into it the implication that Billy was talking to Francis or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they've known each other for years. I'm sure they communicate a lot outside of posting messages to each other on MySpace pages.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like that it wasn't that he wouldn't play the show necessarily, but maybe that like there was some conversation and there was a tone of voice or whatever that set off the possible waterworks that may or may not have occurred.
Yeah.
We have so few facts about this. Can we please move on?
Certainly. Well, in slightly more relevant news, 3 more tour dates have been added to the August tour: Knoxville, Boca Raton, and Charlottesville. And also, tickets went on sale this past weekend for Davenport, Iowa, Louisville, and Charlotte. As of Sunday afternoon, there were still single seats available for all 3 shows, albeit not very good ones, from what I could tell from the Ticketmaster diagram of what the venue looked like. Well, Andrew, I believe last week you said that if these shows didn't sell out quickly, there would be some cause for concern. So it looks like they're selling at about the same rate as the much more expensive Hammond show. So what do you make of this? Are the Pumpkins done?
Or put a stake in there. But yeah, well, I think I guess we can say that this is going to be how it is for the Pumpkins for the rest of foreseeable future. Now, it's not like it's kind of interesting. This week, the Pumpkins suddenly burst back into the pop culture-ness with their song appearing in a trailer that's getting a lot of views because it's attached to Dark Knight. But I guess there's a lot of reasons why the concerts are selling at the pace they are. I don't think it means that they're doomed forever to continue to sell tickets at this rate, or if they'll never be able to sell out a show in an hour or minutes like they used to. But
I don't know,
Jill
Andrew.
mentioned, like Jill mentioned, it's they have it all a lot of it's very. The economy is lousy, and Jill mentioned how it's the old road trip from Chicago to Davenport. It's not quite as cheap as it used to be. Having to depend on even more of the local fan base on the shows that they're visiting. So it is what it is, which is a saying I hate, but
I don't know.
Pumpkins are right now.
I have a feeling that if you can't instantly sell out such megalopoli as Davenport, Knoxville, Boca, and these other places they're going, I think that makes them as sad as any state fair act.
Oh, no.
No, I'm kidding. I don't know. It seems fine to me. It seems comparable to back in 2000, really. They played a lot of venues of similar size, and probably a lot of them got close to selling out and didn't quite sell out, and some sold out. I don't know.
Well, and I think a lot of it has to do with, concerts in general not being on the radar of these types of towns. I mean, I know that it can be kind of a big deal, but, in doing a quick search on what recent concerts have appeared in Davenport, Iowa, the only thing I really could come up with was the Lifehouse concert that was recently played in Davenport. I'm assuming Lifehouse is a band.
Or is it a performance of the unfinished Who album? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, and I would imagine that the American Idol City Tour also goes on some of these different circuits. I mean, it's pretty impressive that they can sell out a show in Davenport, Iowa. Honestly.
No, they haven't.
Well, I mean, if this actually happens, which
they're
I'm
close,
pretty
though.
positive,
I think they will.
It is somewhat close.
That's pretty impressive to me. And I think that the one thing I will say is I did allude to it in my article earlier this week for SP.com. I think the band will do something special in Iowa since they will be practicing there, although I have no idea what yet. So I think there will be some incentive to go there, even in advance of the show itself. That's as much as I know right now. But I think some of these places, it's really impressive to me that they can go into a tiny little town and still have pretty solid fan base to sell out or nearly sell out a concert. I mean, some of the shows that I saw this past year, Philadelphia, for instance, not sold out. I mean, I think that we're assuming a lot of them that I think is not is necessarily fair to assume.
Well, they did do 4 nights in Philly.
Well, yeah, but like 2 of the nights at least weren't sold out. So, yeah. I mean, I'm being a little sarcastic, but
yeah.
it is the Eastern Corridor.
And just to give people some perspective on Boca, let's just say my grandparents live near Boca. Everyone's grandparents live near Boca. I mean, it's in southeast Florida. It's north of Fort Lauderdale and south of West Palm Beach. It is a very, I'll say, elderly population. It's not that close to Miami. I mean, it's close enough that if you lived in Miami, you would drive up there. But
your grandparents heading to the show, Chris?
I don't think so. It hasn't gone on sale yet, so they still have a chance to pick up tickets. But I wouldn't be totally surprised if that show didn't sell out just because of the location it's in. Although Fort Lauderdale does have a young crowd. Tell
them that Billy Corgan is a young man who's made a career out of covering standards like My Heaven.
That's very true.
Show them a My Blue Heaven video. See if you can make that happen. Make that sale.
We gotta be an evangelist for the Pumpkins here.
Just so you know, Chris, the median age in Boca Raton is 43 years. That's pretty high.
That's pretty high.
Yeah.
Are you a connoisseur of median age statistics, Jill? I have no idea if that's high or not. I'll take your word for it.
Well, finally, if you bought one of the over 20 million tickets to The Dark Knight that were sold this weekend, you may have seen a trailer that sounded oddly familiar. The Watchmen graphic novel is being turned into a movie, and the atmospheric soundtrack for the trailer shown before The Dark Knight in many theaters was none other than Smashing Pumpkins' B-side, The Beginning is the End is the Beginning, last seen on the single for similarly titled The End is the Beginning is the End, which, as we know, was also affiliated with a Batman movie of a very different sort. Well, apparently being heard by millions of people is good for sales, as enough Batman fans purchased Beginning is the End is the Beginning on iTunes to sneak it into the top 50 songs this past weekend. Jill, you had a chance to interview Billy about the song's inclusion last week on SmashingPumpkins.com. What do you make of this surprising sales phenomenon?
Well, I think it's actually a case of really good timing for them. I think from watching the trailer, it fits the mood of that trailer perfectly. I think that as Hipsters United posted earlier this week, the interview with the director, who was also the director of 300 and other fairly recently successful movies, I think the movie production team was really excited that they could use the Pumpkins track for this trailer. And I really I'm glad that you included that soundbite at the beginning of the podcast, that it does create some controversy, because I think it's pretty hilarious that, this random, the end is the beginning is the end, that doesn't even have a correct pronounceable acronym for it as Tight Bite used to. I think it's kind of hilarious that this is the song that's propelling them into this this notoriety right now. And from the context that I got from Billy Corgan, which the interview was conducted via email, he was just really excited to be included on this project. I think that he has been. I think in general we've known that he's been a longtime comic book and graphic novel fan. He was recently at the Iron Man premieres and so forth. I think he's just excited to be included on a soundtrack of this magnitude. And like I said, it's a result of amazing timing. The movie has already broken mega records The Dark Knight, rather, has already broken these huge records for first, like, opening weekend sales, and all these different folks have come out to see it. My brother included. He, I think, was seeing it for the third time this afternoon. So I think that, you know, as Billy said at the last comment he made to me, was just, you know, he's glad that this song itself can find some renewed value. So, and I personally really like the song, so I'm happy to see it do well.
Well, in terms of sales, like, I thought it was interesting that this never would have happened 10 years ago. So,
right.
10 years ago, imagine people going to see this, and you see this trailer, and you hear the song, and, you know, if you like it enough, you go on the internet. There was an internet 10 years ago, kids. Like, it was a little bit slower, but it was still there. And you go look it up, and you see, oh, it's on this obscure single. It's a B-side on the single. You probably have to import it from the UK. It probably costs $12, and you get 4 songs out of it, 2 of which are instrumental. And how many people do you really think would have taken the effort to track that down, even if they did like the song? Probably not that many, but now people can just, like, click 99 cents, buy the song, and it just kind of shows how foolish the music industry was to stay away from purchasable downloads for so long. And even Tight Bite got a bit of bump this weekend in iTunes sales. If you go and look at the Rarities and B-Sides collection, which is the album that all of these songs are grouped under for the Pumpkins, those 2 songs are the only ones that have any popularity bars next to them, which I believe is a sliding scale of sales over the past X amount of time.
I just find the... Oh, go ahead, Andy.
Okay. Well, I was about a month or 2 ago, we were talking about the Pumpkins, and, you know, is their biggest song still ahead of them? And I think one of us speculated that
I remember saying it was going to be the beginning is the end is the beginning.
Yeah, there you go.
It was going to come back and be the biggest hit ever. Sorry.
You know, the most likely way for the Pumpkins to sort of pop back into number 1 top 100 sale charts would be to appear in a movie soundtrack that was very popular.
I think you might have said that, Andy. I think that might have been you.
How about that? But
just wanted to pin that down.
Anyhow, so that, you know, it's sort of the magic of a lot of popular culture convergence right there. You know, this movie that, you know, a lot of people who love comic books love the Watchmen, but in terms of people who love the Watchmen, it's not a huge fan base in terms of pop culture on the greater scale, but everyone in the country, a lot of people went to see Batman this weekend. So a lot of people heard the song, and the trailer, even if they didn't know what Watchmen was, it was a very intriguing trailer. That's exactly the sort of convergence of media, different media coming together and making a completely unknown song popular somehow. And this iTunes is here to make it so that this song was nowhere, and then all of a sudden this weekend it's the 50th most popular song in the last few days. So that's all pretty amazing. It's all come together.
Bizarre.
It is so weird. It's so weird, I almost don't know where to begin talking about how weird it is. Like, of all the songs that in their back catalog that you would think, oh, this song might have some unlikely future success somehow, this one is, like, not anywhere near what anyone would have said. It is, in some ways, it's an example of the Pumpkins. It's kind of an example of the way they've always been successful, though, in an odd way. I mean, obviously they've never quite had anything like this, but it's going over the heads of the critics and the tastemakers directly to the audience, like they used. Like, this is how they made their way in the '90s. You know, they didn't. I mean, they had buzz, and yeah, they came out of Chicago, and they had help from Joe Shanahan or whatever. But, you know, all the time, they weren't critics' darlings. Yet they kind of, you know, went over the head of that, the typical way you make it in indie rock. Well, I guess I'm not sure that what I'm saying makes sense, but they went straight to the people with radio, and they were a huge hit with people who aren't the sort of, they're not music snobs. You know, the Pumpkins are popular out there, wave your hands in the suburbs with people listening to the radio. They broke through. There was something obviously different about them in the radio, and people responded in a big way. And just think how odd it is that there's this huge hit movie, and what song comes out of it as some, what... This is a trailer, it wasn't music in Batman that became a hit. It was a trailer, and obviously it was distinctive and compelling that people would go seek it out. I mean, I don't know. I've never watched a trailer, saw the music, and gone and bought the song. Now, I know it happens for other people. It's probably because I don't go to see a lot of movies. But I remember, in some of the write-ups of this, they talked about how 300's trailer was scored by a Nine Inch Nails song, and I'm sure that gave the Nine Inch Nails song a huge sales boost as well. But the whole phenomenon is just very curious.
I think it lends kind of a certain credence to a lot of the critical acclaim of the music that the band was making around that time as well. I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but I always thought, and I always read back then around the creation of the Adore demos, and that was really at the same period at which they were doing Tight Bite and To Bite I a bit.
Can we please stop? Call them beginning and end. That would be really happy to me.
Oh, Jason, I do it because I love.
You do love the band very, very much.
My point was that back then I think they were kind of both criticized and acclaimed for the fact that the music was kind of ahead of its time. It was not really current. It was not really, traditional pop for that time. And I find it interesting that now it's being used for kind of a retro-futuristic movie 11 years later. I mean, for what it's worth, take it for what it's worth. It's just interesting to me that it was kind of ahead of its time, and its full impact was yet to be seen.
It's funny to read the articles and to see the Watchmen fans. Apparently their attitude is that it's a period movie. The movie is set in 1985. Right. They're very the crazy dorky fans of the Watchmen seem to be very adamant about this. But it's weird to think that a sci-fi movie with futuristic things going on, what we might normally think of as futuristic. Of course, I don't know. Maybe nothing futuristic or unusual happens in the movie, but I'm doubtful. So it's sci-fi, but it's set way in the past. So It's like, it doesn't know when it is. And so we go 11 years in the past to get a song that was sort of viewed as, I agree with you. Adore was an album out of time. I don't remember if I blogged this, but I think OK Computer came out the same year. I think OK Computer is a 1998 album like Adore. And I said something that Adore doesn't sound so much like OK Computer as it might, and maybe not the album, but the live incarnation of the band doing the Adore song certainly seems more like an Arcade Fire thing. Seems more in line with these sort of freak folk musical collective thing that we had going on in the last couple years, but it was 10 years ago, so right. I don't know if that makes it ahead of its time, but it certainly places it out of its time. So, maybe in that way, that it would get picked up like this is not totally shocking.
Right. Well, and above everything else, I think, is just how perfect it is for that trailer. I mean, you look at some of these recent, semi-recent movie soundtracks that have just performed amazingly well in the market, and you have, most created by Zach Braff. You have these trailers where the music is just so perfectly suited to the mood of the content that it, just blows up. And I think this is probably a case precisely as that, where that song just matches it perfectly. It really is compelling. It
is a weirdly song. I mean, I know I've used that word to describe it before. Again, will seem like talking like, I used to say this, then it came out in the trailer, of course, but really, it makes you feel like you're watching something, or that there's some sort of story going on. I feel that listening to the song. So,
And it's great for us. Gives us a lot of content, right?
I've gotten 6 posts out of this. Fabulous from that standpoint.
Oh, actually, this is kind of funny. Initially, when I was asked to kind of write up an article for the official site about this, and Billy had volunteered to answer a few questions, they wanted it to be kind of analytical, and I was like, well, there's no news and a trailer that has just released last night and no critical acclaim, so how do I be analytical about this? If I'd waited a couple days, maybe, but you guys have been doing a really good job covering it. So,
yeah. The unlikely success of the beginning is the end is the beginning. Our complete coverage will continue. You know, that's how I feel like.
Exactly.
Like, are you tired of hearing about it yet? I'm not yet tired of writing about it. So.
Well, it's hard to see precisely what it's going to have, like what effects it's going to have, because A, opening weekend hasn't ended, and B, we don't know very much more about this upcoming. I don't know. It's totally rumor-filled production page on IMDb, so yet to be determined. So.
Well, for our in-depth discussion this week, I wanted to take a bit of a look at the Pumpkins' legacy. So last week, Jason, you made a post to hipstersunited.com noting that the Pumpkins were conspicuously absent from a VH1 Top 100 Songs of the 1990s retrospective, and it's been since speculated that their absence was due more to problems securing the rights to post their music videos rather than their music being deemed unworthy of being in the list. But assuming the rights weren't an issue, where do you think the Pumpkins' mid-90s hits would have ended up on the list?
Well, the rights thing makes it a little weird. What one of our commenters, and a commenter I think is pretty smart, said is that he observes that none of the pre-breakup Pumpkins videos are on the websites of MTV or VH1. So I would immediately believe that there's something going on with Virgin that they won't let that happen, which is strange when you go on YouTube and you see all those videos are there and nobody's complaining and trying to get them taken down. So that is odd. Maybe they just think YouTube is uncontrollable. I don't know. But I would question whether it extends to the videos being played on television. The difficulty is they don't play videos on television on MTV or VH1, so I don't really know whether it's an issue for them legally to play those videos on TV, because aside from a show like this, which was the 100 Greatest Songs of the 90s, they counted down all the videos, and they didn't show the entire video, but they would show a little bit and they'd talk about it with some celebrities who were supposedly experts, and these were like F-list celebrities. I mean, they're like nowhere near like the guys from Yacht Rock. I loved Yacht Rock. I thought it was hilarious, but nobody watching TV is going to know who those guys were. Of course I did, so maybe I'm wrong. But
they were really on that show?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
that's amazing.
3 of them at least.
The guys from Yacht Rock.
Yep.
Wow.
Uh-huh. So I don't know. I mean, could they really have left the Pumpkins off 100 Greatest Songs of the 90s because they can't get the rights? I think that's not really possible, because I think they could make a really defensible fair use claim, because all they really were doing was showing brief snippets of these videos, right? And then talking about them and analyzing them, and that's protected. You can do that. The copyright does not defend against that sort of use. So I would think they could have made the list. Okay, so if we ignore the legal thing, it said on their website that the list was determined by votes, and they had like 600,000 votes. I don't know how seriously to take this. I mean, I don't work for VH1. I can't see, what they really did. I don't really know. But, okay, a couple things. These lists, and this list, doesn't have any duplicates, basically, by artist. There was like one Pearl Jam song, one Nirvana song, one Radiohead song. This is not a likely output of just a pure voting thing. Right. In fact, the opposite is more likely. What's really likely is you end up with like 5 Pearl Jam songs, 3 Radiohead songs, 6 Nirvana songs, and they're all like in the top 40. That's the likely output of a vote. So the idea that this was a list determined purely by votes, I mean, it could have been determined by vote, but VH1 probably said, okay, here's a list of songs to vote from, right? Mm-hmm. And the list of songs had like one song for each artist. So if that's what went on, I can see the Pumpkins missing the list on voting. But I would think it was pretty weird that they would still. I mean, when I say I can see it, it's like, it's possible, but some of the stuff that's on this list, it's very hard to conceive of these songs beating out whatever Smashing... I mean, if there was one Smashing Pumpkins song on the list, say it was like Today, it's just weird to see how Today doesn't make this list. I Alone by Live comes in at number 62. Really? I Alone by Live got more votes than Today.
Lightning Crashes was such a better song.
Lightning Crashes, of course, not on the list because only one song per artist.
Right.
So... And I have not triple-checked this list to see one song per artist, but...
I also noticed that, so I think you're probably right.
I'm pretty sure it's right. Goo
Goo Dolls' Iris, still topping the adult contemporary charts today. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
It's just so goofy.
Yeah, I don't really know what to make of it. It's just bizarre. I mean, think of all the lists you've ever seen of things like this. Has Pearl Jam ever failed outright to make a list like this? Has Nirvana ever failed outright to make a list like this? Well, Nirvana has the suicide bonus going on. But,
gosh.
It's just weird that the
Nice.
Pumpkins didn't make this list. It's just strange. And I don't know...
But Duncan
what to
Sheik
say
is on it.
Yeah, and Snow.
And Edwin McCain.
And Vanilla Ice.
I'll argue up and down on the Vanilla Ice contest, but there's a lot of crap out here.
I would say even if Today wasn't on there, like 1979 probably could have been the one Pumpkin song included, and I would argue that would probably be, even if it's just a pure popularity vote and it was treated as such, I would assume that would be pretty high on there. It was quite a popular song, wasn't it?
It could have just been a weird mistake. Like, maybe they picked Rocket as the song. Like, what is that? And so they didn't... I don't mean at all to, like, so VH1 hates Smashing Pumpkins. No, it's just so weird to me. And it just makes me wonder, because I would think if Pearl Jam missed the list, they would still make the list. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, if there was some sort of error and they got left off, they would be put in before the show went on TV. And I think there's a lot of bands, a lot of songs like that on this list. And to me, I would think the Smashing Pumpkins are one of those bands that. And obviously, I'm very biased, but the acknowledgement of this, though, that proves it. If you go to hipstersunited.com, if you find my blog post about this, you can see an image from the VH1 website where they have the link to the greatest songs of the 90s module on their website, and the link says, it's everything from NSYNC to Smashing Pumpkins, sprinkled with some salt and pepper. So, clearly...
They made the marketing materials.
Clearly, Smashing Pumpkins are some sort of valuable 90s reference that you make when you're trying to get people to click on links. That notable, right?
Yeah.
Don't they make the list? Don't they make any list like this? I think they do. So, very strange.
If anything, they should have been number 6, because there's no way that Baby Got Back was the 6th greatest song of the 1990s. I'm sorry.
If you'd watched the discussion on Baby Got Back, headline, I think you might just reconsider. It's the ultimate ass song, Chris. I don't know if you know that, but if you knew that, you'd probably realize... Isn't the ultimate ass song of all time deserving of a spot in the top 10 of songs just from that decade? I mean,
That's true. It is groundbreaking.
Oh my God, Becky, look at her butt.
Oh. Amazing we had that sample on cue. That is...
And I can only imagine that you were going through all this material just like tearing your hair out trying to figure out what the heck was going on. I mean, I know you alluded to that in the post, but it is so confusing.
What is wrong with this cable network? I'm going to spend hours figuring it out. It was more that I was sitting around, because I'm a graduate student, I don't have too much to do, at least not on a schedule. I have a lot to do, but not on a schedule. So I was sitting there, and I had the TV on, and this show was on, and I was like, oh, I'll just leave this on, and, because I'm a Pumpkins fan, run a Smashing Pumpkins fan blog, I thought, well, I'll see where they come up. And they didn't come up. That's all. So I thought it was very strange. So then I started to look into it, and I honestly don't think I would have posted about it at all. But it was that advertising blurb. It mentioned the band's name. I was like, okay, I'm posting this. I mean, it's just too much. It's just too much.
Well, where do you think the Pumpkins would have ended up on the list? I mean, obviously we're all biased, but
if they would have ended up on the list if what? Because they're not on, so I don't know.
I still think it's got to be something with a mistake or with legal rights, because the entire videos are on the on their website.
Okay, so let's assume it's the legal rights. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'll try to answer your question. I think they're in the 20s with Today. That would be my guess. I mean, it's probably not as big a song as Loser or Enter Sandman, which are 22 and 18 respectively. But it's probably bigger than Creep by Radiohead, which is 31, and it's probably about the same as Mr. Jones, which is 27, or Black Hole Sun, which is 25. So I'd slot it probably in between What a Man by Salt and Pepper with En Vogue and Jump Around by House and Pain. House and Pain. So 23 and a half. That's where I'd put it. Is that specific enough?
Yeah. I'd put it in the top 30, between 20 and 32. And I would think if there's one song you had to pick, that song would probably be Today. If you ask your average person who was growing up, a teenager or a 20-something in the 90s, name a song by a Smashing Pumpkins, I think the answer is going to be either Today or the Rat in a Cage song. So, and I think Today is a better representation of their work as a whole. So I think that would be if they would been. They said, "Oh, we have to pick Smashing Pumpkins have to go in there somewhere." And we had to pick one song. I think that would be the song that the VH1 Brain Trust would pick.
What about you, Jill? You're totally biased. Would you put them at number one?
Well, hello there. I would probably just take out Hanson's Mbop and replace it with Today, right at 20. But I'm conflicted on this because was Beastie Boys' Sabotage really that big of a song?
I think
not in my market.
That
not
one
in my
dropped down. Yeah, that was a.
I'm a big Beastie Boys fan. Grew up with it, but that song did not hit the radio play that Today or 1979 did, because it was kind of in your face. So, I mean, it's definitely not bigger. Today, definitely not a bigger song than MC Hammer's epic "You Can't Touch This." But I think it deserves that late teens, early 20s position, so get rid of Hanson.
Jill, you recently posted a somewhat older video of course, now I can't remember his name, Ben Queller.
Yes.
Ben Queller's a young pop guy, some pop songwriter, driving around town waxing poetic about the cultural resonance of Today, right? Mm-hmm. And how iconic the introductory guitar riff is. I mean, I think that's to me that's why it's the song, because it's that makes the list over 1979, which had greater chart success. But it's the intro riff, it's the video, it's when that song hit in '93. It's all the energy of the incipient alt rock explosion at that moment. That song was totally at the top of that.
And the name of the song reflects the lyrics. It's like a first for the Pumpkins. After Gish, at least.
That's right.
Anyway.
Yeah. Rhinoceros, not about a rhinoceros.
But it should have been.
Would have made it a lot better. A lot better.
Yeah, on this podcast, we often talk about the Pumpkins as compared to Radiohead. I think just because when you think of the bands that are still around today and are culturally relevant, that's probably the first one that comes to mind of the Pumpkins' peers at the time. But if you go through the list starting at the top of just the alternative bands, I mean, it's really hard to compare, Today to I Want It That Way by the Backstreet Boys. It's like, I don't know how you really compare two different genres like that, but at the top you've got Nirvana, you've got U2, then you go down a little bit, there's a lot of like R&B acts in there. REM, Pearl Jam, Alanis Morissette, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Metallica. That's in the top 20. If you just think about them as bands rather than songs, I would say the Pumpkins are probably closer to Pearl Jam. At least that's where, at the time, I think the best comparison between the Pumpkins and another of their contemporaries probably was Pearl Jam.
I think that's right. And I happen to have the statistic off the top of my head because I looked into it this last week. Number of top 10 modern rock hits in their career. Pearl Jam 15, Pumpkins 17. So very similar. I think you're right. That's a good comparison.
Yeah, and I could see Pearl Jam being higher on this list only because the song they chose, Jeremy, probably was more iconic of a song than Today was.
I agree with that.
So I could see the Pumpkins coming soon after Jeremy.
But Semi-Charmed Life by Third Eye Blind.
Before.
That's the second reference to that song that's been on this podcast.
Is it really? I do not remember the other one.
Jill referenced it in the past.
I must have blacked it out.
I admit it. I do own 3 of their albums.
But Jason, you talked a little second ago about the...
You guys all know the riff. Come on.
That's why it's at number 34.
Exactly.
You talked about the suicide effect with Nirvana, and I actually have a really appropriate, I think, kind of exchange of emails here that I want to read because I think it's really appropriate to this. So, sports and pop culture writer Bill Simmons from ESPN.com and pop culture journalist Chuck Klosterman, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but
no, Klosterman is right.
Okay, they publicly exchanged emails in 2004. And they had a little conversation, and they included the Pumpkins in there, and their Pumpkins' place in history compared to Nirvana. And so Bill Simmons says, if Billy Corgan died in 1994 instead of Kurt Cobain, would MTV have been running the Smashing Pumpkins 10 years later retrospectives this summer? And Chuck says, no, his retrospective would only run on MTV2. Had Corgan died, it would have been a bigger deal than Shannon Hoon from Blind Melon, but still way smaller than Cobain. Plus, in the spring of '94, the Pumpkins had only released Gish and Siamese Dream, and these were not iconic records. Siamese Dream is very good, and the songs are absolutely everywhere, but it did not become a definitive sonic backdrop for the national aesthetic. When people hear the first 9 seconds of Smells Like Teen Spirit, they immediately associate those chords with that specific cultural era. When people hear the first 9 seconds of Today, they often think to themselves, is this cherub rock? But Bill Simmons comes back and he says, I agree with your take on the Pumpkins as much as it hurts, although I still believe that their best 10 songs are better than Nirvana's best 10 songs. The fact remains Nirvana came first and paved the way. So, I mean, Bill Simmons has actually pointed out on a number of occasions that part of what puts Nirvana on a higher level in people's minds than the Pumpkins or Pearl Jam is that because of Kurt Cobain's suicide, they didn't have time to get played out. And I think this might apply to Pearl Jam, but not really for the Pumpkins. I think Pearl Jam receded in popularity just because they released, I don't know, what to me sounded like pretty much the same sounding record over and over. But the Pumpkins, I think, declined because they went so far away from their past sound after Melancholy with Adore that they alienated a lot of their initial fan base.
I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to clarify my suicide comment. I think Chuck Klosterman is mostly right. Here's what I would say. Smells Like Teen Spirit might still be number 1 on this list if Kurt Cobain had lived, but you don't have to look at the list to know Smells Like Teen Spirit is number 1 because, I mean, and that's the suicide effect.
Right.
You don't even have to look. You don't even have to watch the show. You know number 1 is Smells Like Teen Spirit. That would not be true if Cobain had lived. You'd be like, is it Smells Like Teen Spirit? Is it one by U2? You know, like you could have that conversation, right? Mm-hmm. You can't have that conversation with him having blown off his head and leaving his 2-year-old daughter without a dad. Sorry.
Well, and I think the weirdest part of it, and if I remember correctly, we've had this conversation a little bit on the blog and through the podcast to some extent, is that Kurt Cobain he thought that was a complete sellout, too. Like, he did not want to go that direction. He thought that the cheerleaders and their pom-poms was trite in the music video, and he thought that it was a very watered-down version of what he wanted to do, and thereby would have made him less successful in the public sphere. So I think it's whereas, on the flip side, I think the Pumpkins, even now, are vying for that top commercial spot. I don't know.
Which people don't like.
Well, they don't like it, but you know what? That's what achieves cultural relevance.
Yeah, and you can question... I'm not going to seriously question Cobain when he says things like that he thinks this is a sellout or whatever. But, I remember once, and I wish I knew who said it, but someone writing about Cobain and his bemoaning of his success said, "No one forms a rock band to remain anonymous." And I thought, that is such a devastating comeback. If you hated it, and Courtney Love said it right after he killed himself. If you hated it so much, why didn't you just come home, basically, and stop touring and stop being in the rock band? For some reason that wasn't an option, and that's, I don't know what to make of that. But
there were lots of psychological issues, and I think probably about 20 books have been written about Kurt and his issues with varying degrees of insight and accuracy. But
I wonder if he had a lot of almost guilt that he achieved so much success commercially, whereas people he thought who had more talent didn't.
Right.
And I think that really ate at him, probably.
But I think Jason is pretty dead on, and that's a bad pun. Pretty accurate. No, seriously, I did not mean to do that. He's really accurate when he says that you really don't even have to look at the top of the list to see what it says. And I think that, I don't know if this is necessarily a factor of music press in general being a little too cookie cutter, but I think that it does say something for the critics of that era itself. I tend to agree with what you read in those emails, Chris, that Smells Like Teen Spirit, really does embody that sense of alternative rock. That is sort of the imagery of alternative rock in my mind. And maybe it's the media, having told me that for the last, 20 years. But I think it really does do a good job of embodying that. So.
And even without the Kurt Cobain situation there, if you think about some other bands on this list, so bands like Collective Soul that Jason and I were actually discussing on IM the other day, so I could see their hits getting remembered more fondly just because the band, they just kind of disappeared from the airwaves. But the Pumpkins take a hit kind of in the collective consciousness because of their later, what could be seen as a failure in an album like Adore. So people don't think, man, the Pumpkins were great, whatever happened to them. They think, man, the Pumpkins were great, it's too bad they sucked after Siamese Dream or Melancholy.
Right.
I'm gonna take issue with this, Chris. Nobody even thinks about Collective Soul. That's the difference.
Well, true.
Right, but if you're looking
totally
at
pedestrian, and so they're irrelevant. So
world I have known.
Maybe people don't like the Pumpkins now because they changed, but the Pumpkins were great, and so that's why people still talk about them and still either hate them or love them or whatever. It's because they were important and their music mattered and it was different and it was, all those things.
But I think there's a nostalgia factor. If you're looking at it, someone gives you a list that says, hey, vote on which of these songs you liked from this past era, 10, 20 years ago. And you look at it and say, oh yeah, I remember that song. Hey, I kind of like that song. And you click on it and vote for it. Rather than with the Pumpkins where they continued to be in the public eye and kind of failed publicly.
I bet Perfect was the song on the list. Oh, that was a watered down version of 1979. And then nobody votes.
No wonder, yeah.
But then, Chris, by using that logic, how do you, as a rational human being, actually vote for "Wannabe" by the Spice Girls? How do you conscionably check that box?
Two words: girl power.
They broke up before they could get played out.
But then they came back, and then they broke up again because, it was just so difficult for them. I mean, that's played out here in the last 6 months. And we all saw Posh Spice's little boys come up on stage with them and breakdance. I mean, come on.
Greatest moment of the podcast to date. Jill talking about the Spice Girls. But they came back. That was awesome. I'm sorry.
Well, this, I think there are a lot of songs on this list that were notable only for their sort of, for a while they were, for no particular reason whatsoever, they were had a pop culture significance, like MC Hammer's "You Can't Touch This," that song was
I started doing it too.
horrible, but for in the 1990s.
Not horrible. It was
that's
amazing.
always not horrible. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's just the video that was
it
horrible.
It was
Literally all of America for about 4 months walked around going. Dun, 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 dun. I mean,
and
They made hammer pants.
there's a reason.
Hammer pants.
yeah. And okay, so I think La Vida Loca was also on the list, and that's one of those songs that was everywhere for like 3 months, and so.
Or Belle Biv DeVoe. Pick on Belle Biv.
Okay.
Don't even try.
I don't remember that.
See, so much of this list, there's consensus, right? And
Yes.
I think until you get down to 3 a.m. by Matchbox 20, and you're like, really?
Really?
Which one of their songs was that?
The one about abortion. That was culturally relevant.
The best part of the actual VH1 program was when Shine by Collective Soul came on, and I swear they spent 20 seconds talking about how it came to be that the guy went, yeah, in the little break between the guitars. They were going on and on like this was like a stroke of genius in the studio, And really, and the
That
guy
made the song.
The producer was like, "Why, yeah," and I was just like, "Yeah, I don't know, yeah." Unbelievable.
It's like the cowbell in Don't Fear the Reaper. It makes the song.
We need more, yeah.
Or, yeah.
I don't even know who Nelson is. Does that make me not a child of the 80s and 90s? Who's Nelson?
I don't know.
What was the song by Nelson?
Can't Live Without Your Love and Affection.
That sounds vaguely familiar.
Well, that was a hair rock band in the early 90s, if I'm recalling properly.
This was like the demographic quota that they had to fill for hair rock?
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe.
But no pumpkins.
It's a travesty. Well,
And a sternly worded letter to VH1.
Andrew, did anything happen this week in Pumpkins history?
Not a whole lot. We're kind of got a big event coming in a week or two to come, so we're not going to mention that to keep you all in suspense. But last year at this time, Pumpkins were playing their residency at the Fillmore in San Francisco, and this Christmas time you'll be able to buy a DVD about that residency and we talked about it previously about how Pumpkins were surprised by the reception that they got. Negative reception that they got in San Francisco. So certainly was be an interesting moment in Pumpkin history that you'll get to view in a DVD this Christmas time. So that's what happened in this week in Pumpkin's history.
We need music this week in Pumpkin's history. Have some sort of thing.
That could be a fan contest. If anyone out there is listening and wants to come up with a theme song for This Week in Pumpkins History, send it along and we'll mention you on the show.
Ooh.
Well, thanks.
But only your first name.
Well, thanks everybody for checking out episode 14 of the podcast. It was definitely an interesting one. And by the time this one gets posted to the website, I'll have spent 7 straight days recording, editing, and or planning podcasts after we were a bit late last week, so I can definitely use a few days off, I think, but please leave us feedback in the meantime on hipstersunited.com, and hopefully you will join us again next week. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Hipsters United podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Smashing Pumpkins or Warner Brothers Reprise Music. All opinions offered by panelists or guests of the Hipsters United podcast are their own and do not represent the opinions of the Smashing Pumpkins. All audio used during the show is licensed for non-profit use per the terms and conditions on the Live Music Archive at archive.org. Intro music is from the Machina 2 album released for free download on the internet by the Smashing Pumpkins in August of 2000. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa. As I lay me down to sleep, this I pray.
You say we talk so all the time. So